Disclaimer, this is of course all just my opinion. I am well aware I have never published a book. This is just a subjective rant, so feel free to take it at that. So I keep seeing praise lobbed on the Kingkiller Chronicle series, and I just can't keep quiet anymore. I mean, people are saying stuff like, seriously, Pat breaks all the rules and sometimes it's so fresh. This is why I love fantasy so much. After a recent string of okay fantasy novels, a couple of good ones, but nothing to really get excited about, I've rediscovered my passion thanks to this book. I'm so impressed and so in love, I can't begin to describe it. But I can try and give you a feel for the book, if I can figure out where to start and how to do justice to this masterpiece.
One of the reviews I read compared it to the Song of Ice and Fire and Lord of the Rings, saying that the book was equal to the best of fantasy written thus far. Well, let me tell you, this doesn't stand alongside the fantasy greats. It knocks them off the shelves.
Knocks them off the shelf? This book has a higher rating on Goodreads than The Lord of the Rings, a book series that to this day has defined and redefined all of fantasy. That just can't be right. I mean, look guys, I know this is all largely subjective, and if you like this, that's great and all. I just gotta get this off my chest for personal reasons. I have given and re-given this speech so many times, I just have to immortalize it in crappy, low-quality YouTube form once and for all. I'm gonna try and sum up my main points. As my friends can tell you, I've literally gone on for over 2 hours with how much I hate this book. So, without further ado, the problem with The Name of the Wind. The Name of the Wind has 3 core interconnecting flaws that bring it down. The way the story is framed, the main character himself, and everything else. Problem 1. The way the story is framed. I have an inherent problem with flashbacks as a storytelling device. See, they instantly suck out the drama or suspense of any story by simple inference that no matter how many twists and turns happen, we already know how the story ends. That being said, using a flashback doesn't inherently make a story bad. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a prime example of a prequel done well, as it addresses mysteries and dealt with characters that we largely knew nothing about. When you make your story a prequel or a flashback, it no longer becomes a what will happen story, but shifts into a who are these people kind of story. In other words, it becomes character driven while sacrificing plot. That by itself isn't always bad. Within the first chapter of The Hobbit, you're told that Bilbo makes it back home alive by the end. This immediately frames the story in a more fun way. We're left wondering, how on earth will he make it out of this pickle, while still feeling safe and enjoying a light-toned adventure? This story starts off with the first half of the entire book being a brutal murder, and the main character then stuck in a visceral shock, unwilling to do anything. Due to the framing device, we know something is eventually going to snap him out of it, so the entire section of this book is left feeling rather pointless and draining. And that's the entire first half of a 600-plus page book. By the time Kvothe is back on his feet and willing to take action for himself, you've read nearly the length of The Hobbit. Problem number 2. Kvothe. Kirito from Sword Art Online is more likable, more engaging, and has a better character art than Kvothe. There, I said it. Now, I know that's subjective, but I will fight you on this if you tell me he is anything more than a boring, wish-fulfillment, self-insert power fantasy. He spends the first half of the story just refusing to do anything, because as soon as he does decide to do something, he succeeds near instantly at everything he does. You can count on one hand the number of times he fails, and looking at each failure shows that even those have to have an asterisk attached to them. He doesn't lose a fight because he's not good enough. He loses to 5 trained assassins after he hasn't slept in days. He instantly perfects magic better than nearly every teacher at the school. Even the explosion that happens is because he's overtaxed himself. At no point does he fail in any sort of fair fight or simply because he's outmatched. He's the best at everything. Hasn't played an instrument in years? Picks it up and hypnotizes everyone with his perfect melody. The list goes on and on and on. This whole book is either him moping because the entire world is literally conspiring against him, or it's him perfectly solving every problem. And all of that is okay, actually. See, even in this there is potential. You could have a sort of fantasy Tony Stark, or a more modern take on Holmes, ironically both played by Robert Downey Jr., who is a genius but his own hubris eventually causes his downfall. Watching him glide through overwhelming odds only to get cocky and then struck down and have to learn humility and rely on others would be a great and very interesting storyline. This is why I call the 3 issues interlocking. See, we know there's no chance of this due to the framing. Older Kvothe, as shown by the narration and modern day setting, is still a mopey but all-powerful god. It's shown he's basically unbeatable, but just like the earlier city sections, is just moping around for unknown reasons. This may seem like an indication that he will be brought low by his own hubris and go into hiding as a sort of penance, but he goes out and murders demon spiders for fun. And as he narrates, he will literally spend pages talking about he was smarter than everyone there, played better, a better fencer, or just a master at magic. He's the same prideful prick that he is in the past. And this means we know he won't develop as a character. He will remain the same all-powerful, self-important idiot that the whole world tries to overcome, but he's just so cool, he'll stop it all on its own. He is moping in the present day, so I'm sure something bad will happen, but I can guarantee you this. It won't be because of a fair fight. He will blame himself, but the odds will be so overwhelmingly against him, the viewer won't really think it's his fault. And he won't grow or learn from it. He's going to keep moping in that house till he decides, hey, I am just the coolest thing ever, and then go back to just kicking everything's butt without any sort of growth or meaning to the whole adventure. Which leads me to part 3. Part 3, everything else. Okay, that name is a little facetious, I admit, but it's kind of the saddest part to me. Besides Kvothe and the framing, everything else in this book is actually really decent. Downright good even at parts. Side characters are filled with likable qualities, interesting stories, and witty dialogue. The whole section with the dragon was really interesting, even though it focused on 2 fairly unlikable people. And even the background lore and world building, which though probably add up to about a combined total 50 pages of this book, when it did show up, was very intriguing. And Ari was just the most fun and interesting little side character you could hope for. But the fact that you have to see and hear it through the eyes of a truly unlikable, unchanging idiot just ruins the entire book. Guys, we're better than this. Tolkien's characters each represented morals and their stories held a greater purpose. Sanderson manages to write witty, complex characters relatable to a modern day without losing the fantastical. They make characters cool and interesting while still retaining flaws beyond, the world hates me, I'm gonna mope like Batman. They give their characters weaknesses that matter. They fail, and then they learn, and then they overcome. Or die. None of which are available for Kvothe to do. And I'm sorry, but as long as we're tied to this weak, self-indulgent power fantasy, I don't think I can enjoy this book at all. It offended me and angered me by thinking I would find anything even remotely relatable in a person like Kvothe. And that's why The Name of the Wind remains my second least favorite book I have ever read. Whew, sorry for all the negativity, guys, just needed to do that. Feel free to tell me how wrong I am in the comments, just please use actual reasons to back up your opinions if you want a response. Take care and God bless. Just a side note, I'm apparently not the only one that thinks this way, so I guess that's good to know I'm not alone.